If I can't tell, and it's also true that the social media platforms will be one of the biggest factors in who is the leader of the United States. I mean, big stakes. We're talking about war and peace. We're talking about economic development. We're talking about how the poor are treated. I mean, it's the biggest issues in the world. And it kind of comes down to one of the biggest variables anyway, is the algorithms, and they're invisible. I would say that as long as the algorithms on social media are invisible, and people who are, let's say, influential in their own way, such as me, the fact that we can't tell what behavior we're doing is making a difference or if it's a coincidence is completely unacceptable as a system. Forget about me. Forget about, Trump versus anybody. Forget about the specifics of the politics. If your influencers can't tell why their numbers go down, and then they do go down, completely unacceptable. The system is 100% broken. All right, the reason I'm not using that word is because I found when I tried to monetize the YouTube channel, where these periscopes get downloaded and turned into YouTube content as well. So if you just search for Real Coffee by Scott Adams or Real Coffee with Scott Adams, you'll find my YouTube channel that's the same content about an hour later. But when I monetized it, I noticed that YouTube had a number of my videos unchecked and they would not monetize. What did they have in common? So there were something like 100 out of 500 of my videos. YouTube's rules did not let them monetize it, which, by the way, I don't object to. I think they should have rules that keep some kind of content from being mixed with some kinds of advertisers. So no problem with the fact that they have those rules. Those are good rules. But guess what content was not monetized? Some of them, I think, probably had a bad word in them. Yeah, so I think some of them were because I used a bad word. And I'm okay with that, because actually it gives me the discipline to avoid those words. Because I kind of want to, but on the other hand, cursing is sort of part of my personality, and it's hard to act that artificial if I'm in the moment. If I'm in the moment, I tend to use the words that are most natural to me, and they tend to be those. But this extra bit of discipline might be good for me to try to keep away from it. But the other group, the largest group that was not monetized was when I talked about a certain HOAX, which I'm not going to mention because this one would get demonetized. So there was a certain FINE PEOPLE HOAX that whenever it was in the title or in the content, they were all demonetized. Now, if you remember that content, most of you saw it, there wasn't anything there that should have been demonetized. There really wasn't. I didn't use any swearing. I didn't call for any violence, nothing like that. But that content is very damaging to a certain portion of the political world, and it got suppressed. Now, is that a coincidence? Or is it just perfectly understandable because perhaps that content comes with a certain set of vocabulary that would seem racial, and that would be good enough reason? I mean, just because it was a racial conversation, even though all intentions were positive, it might be there's an algorithm that's picking up keywords of some sort and says, oh, there's some kind of racial component to this, and we don't need that for our advertisers. If that's the reason, I'm actually fine with that. I don't have any problem with it at all. So here's the problem. Because we're entering the political season, I have these questions. Why did my Periscope traffic seem to drop off suddenly at the same day? Could be because of content. Why did my traffic from LinkedIn to Dilbert.com, which has absolutely nothing to do with politics, except that my blog lives there, so there might have been some keyword problems there. Actually, that's probably why. But when I look at that, was there an algorithm change? Is somebody just preparing for 2020? Is my profile being brought down? And by the way, my YouTube traffic, forget about all the demonetization. My YouTube traffic just dropped by about 25% suddenly as well. Now, here's the question. Could all of these things be a coincidence? And the answer is yes. Not a coincidence exactly, but could they have perfectly legitimate explanations, which if I heard them, I would say to myself, oh, okay. You know, it was free speech. I didn't say anything wrong, but I do see why this content doesn't match well with advertisers. I can see that. But I don't have access to that argument. I am left to guess. Is there something going on? Is it a coincidence that that LinkedIn, Periscope, and YouTube all showed a dramatic decline at about the same time? Somebody says seasonal. Could be seasonal. Could be nothing but the weather getting better. But here's the problem. I don't know. And then you look at Dave Rubin, who is noticing a sharp drop-off in his traffic too, and I think he's wondering if he's being shadow banned. So here's my point. I don't know if any changes have been made that would be specific to my traffic. I don't know, and I have no way of knowing. The fact that I have no way of knowing is absolute ironclad argument for regulating the algorithms of the major platforms. The fact that I can't tell is all you need. Because if I could tell, then maybe there would be something to debate, something to challenge, etc. But the fact that I can't tell is the end of the conversation. If I can't tell, and it's also true that the social media platforms will be one of the biggest factors in who is the leader of the United States. I mean, big stakes. We're talking about war and peace. We're talking about economic development. We're talking about how the poor are treated. I mean, it's the biggest issues in the world. And it kind of comes down to one of the biggest variables anyway, is the algorithms, and they're invisible. I would say that as long as the algorithms on social media are invisible, and people who are, let's say, influential in their own way, such as me, the fact that we can't tell what behavior we're doing is making a difference or if it's a coincidence is completely unacceptable as a system. Forget about me. Forget about Trump versus anybody. Forget about the specifics of the politics. If your influencers can't tell why their numbers go down, and then they do go down, completely unacceptable. The system is 100% broken. And let me make sure that I'm saying this as clearly as possible. Without that transparency, democracy does not exist. Now, we're a republic, but still there's democratic elements to the voting, etc. But without transparency on the social media algorithms, we do not have, and we should stop talking as though we have, something like a democracy, something like a republic. We don't. We lost it. Now, it could be, like I say, there may actually be nothing going on behind the scenes that I should be worried about at all. In fact, there could be things going on behind the scenes that are helping me, and I don't even know that. But democracy is dead. The republic is dead. It's not something you have to worry about in the future. It already happened. That lack of transparency is the end of the republic. That's not an exaggeration, is it? You tell me, is that an exaggeration? The lack of social media transparency is the end of the republic. There is some new source of power, and we don't even know their names. It might not be that they're talking to each other. It might not be that they have a specific agenda beyond, the left they prefer over the right, or they don't like the president. It could be limited. It could be something that goes away in the next cycle. Possible. But the fact that we don't know is the end of the United States as it was written up in the Constitution. The founders did not anticipate the internet. If they had, I'm pretty sure they would have written the Constitution differently. AOC and the Freedom Caucus have something to agree on. The Freedom Caucus being a very conservative group, and AOC being whatever is the direct opposite. Apparently they agree on the question of mass facial recognition in public. They don't like it. So the far left and the, I don't know how far right they are, but let's say the right, does not like companies and governments being able to do facial recognition of everybody all the time in public. Here's my opinion on that. Doesn't matter. It's going to happen anyway. I completely understand why people don't want it. It's a strong argument. It's an argument that the left and the right agree with. I completely understand why people don't want it. It restricts your freedom. It's giving up rights in a sense. You have some expectation of privacy even in public. And when I mean privacy in public, I mean that you're anonymous when you're walking through the crowd. I don't think there's even the slightest chance that we won't have universal facial recognition. I just don't see any chance it's not going to happen. Because if you have a security camera, that security footage is going somewhere. Maybe it's local, but probably more and more it's going to be in the cloud. So once that video reaches the cloud, is there really going to be a law that says I can't run another piece of software against my own data? Why not? Why would it be illegal for me, a private company, with a camera that's on my front door? Why would it be illegal to take that video, which is legal, and then once I've taken the video, I own it? I own the video. I can run other software against that video. Can you tell me that you could actually pass a law that would tell me what software I could run against my own data? Keep in mind that my intentions are not to create any information that becomes public outside my company. I'm just looking at my own data. You can't tell me that could ever be illegal. And if you can't get rid of all the video cameras, I just don't see how you can enforce such a thing. Now, you also are going to have the problem that everybody with a smartphone, everybody who someday has glasses that are recording everything, pretty soon everything's going to be recorded all the time. Your self-driving cars are going to have cameras 360. So if you're anywhere near a car, you're going to be on video, and a lot of them. You're just walking down a sidewalk in the future will probably put you on video of every car that drives by. Now, they don't necessarily have to save that data, but they could. So just like privacy in general, do you remember when we were talking about, it seems years ago now, when we were talking about, geez, someday the government will have the ability to monitor all of our communications. And people said, we will stop that. We're never going to let the government monitor all of our communications. And what do we have now? Well, we live in a world in which the government monitors all of our conversations. Now, that doesn't mean there's somebody literally watching you when you're talking. It means that they have access to it if they want it. Most of us are boring, so they don't care about it, but they certainly can. There's nothing to stop them from getting literally every conversation you've ever made electronically. They know exactly where you've been if you had your smartphone with you, and you did. Of course you had your smartphone with you. So they know everywhere you've been. They know everything you've purchased. And they know everything you've said if they care to. Now let me ask you this. How is your life worse? In what ways is your life worse because the government has all that information? There might be reasons. I'm not saying there are no reasons. I'm just saying that whatever you were afraid of, those are probably valid fears. But now that we know what the situation looks like, at least at the moment, things could get worse any day. But at the moment, we have, somebody saying in the comments, did you notice that terrorism almost went away? We hear stories of people being caught all the time. People being entrapped and people trying to buy explosives from an FBI informant. But if you notice that every time there's a serious threat that looks like a big plot, I'm not talking about the lone gunmen, they're still hard to find, but anybody who had a big plot to blow something up, don't they always end up talking to an FBI undercover person who's trying to sell them something? It feels like the FBI gets inserted every time. So does our complete police state lack of privacy help us, or does it hurt us? Well, has anybody here personally been injured by this lack of privacy? I'm sure there have been. Like, it's a big world with lots of stuff happening, so I'm sure there's somebody who's been injured by the government having complete knowledge of its citizens, probably. I don't know how I have been injured. I just know that I feel safer because there's less terrorism. Now, I had predicted years ago, many years ago, that the increase in terrorism would result in a complete lack of privacy. I think we're here. And I said that complete lack of privacy would actually be a solution to terrorism. It might have its own problems, but it would be an actual complete answer to terrorism. And I think we're seeing a situation where it looks like it's a fairly complete answer to terrorism. So we'll see. But anyway, the facial recognition thing, I think, is going to go the same way. There will be honest, smart people who will fight as hard as they can to stop it. There will be very good arguments for why we shouldn't have it. We will be outraged. There will be possibly protests in the streets. And then it's going to happen anyway. And after it happens, your life will get better, not worse. Because here's the thing that people always forget in the United States. In the United States, if a dictator wanted to grab power, we'd know where they live. There's so much lack of privacy that we're going to know a lot about our leaders. In fact, one of the biggest problems in the world right now is that we know too much about our leaders. Because if you know too much, there's always something to complain about. There's always something you think, well, I better look into that. If I didn't know about that, I wouldn't worry about it. But the fact that I do know about it, well, I better dig deeper. So you're seeing that with Trump especially. So my prediction is this. You will have an even more complete lack of privacy about what you're doing and where you are. And that 10 years from now, there will be complete facial recognition everywhere. Probably our DNA will be used in ways that you never thought, and information about you. And that, here's the strange part, and you'll be happier. That's my prediction, that you will be happier as your privacy decreases, your happiness will improve. The exception would be people who voluntarily put things on social media are going to be way less happy because people put bad things on social media and it kills their life. So that part's going to be totally bad. But those are also voluntarily, things people do voluntarily. All right.